All right, so this is video 6 on how to use Claude Cowork for Sales. In this video, we're gonna look at how you can use Claude to identify the health of your business, figure out what deals are gonna close and what deals are at risk, and how you can mitigate that risk using Claude to coach you through those deals. Now, we're gonna look at two workflows today. The first one is how we can use Claude in order to look at all the metrics that are sitting within our CRM to understand how well our sales process is performing. Since we have Claude already connected to our CRM, we're gonna be able to aggregate all the meetings we've had, all the opportunities we've created to understand what are the bottlenecks in our sales funnel and where we can optimize so that we can hit our revenue goals. The second workflow we'll walk through is how we can use Claude Cowork to identify which deals in our sales pipeline are at risk and how we can mitigate the risk. Claude is really great to be a sales coach to understand exactly what gaps in our deals exist and how we can fill in those gaps. Also, all the skills files and workflows that I showed throughout this course will be available to you in the description below so you can implement them in your own sales process. Now, before we dive into today's video, a quick intro to me. My name is Sanjay. I'm the founder of AccuSales. We're a go-to-market engineering firm helping sales teams adopt AI to really scale their revenue function, so generating more pipeline and closing more customers. So if you really like the idea of how AI is really impacting sales and go-to-market, follow me here on YouTube for more content. All right, so the first workflow I want to walk you all through is using Claude in order to get a snapshot of the health of your business. So something that's very common for sales leaders or sales reps to want to understand is how they're tracking with their leading indicators. So if you think about revenue and closed won business as a lagging indicator, the leading indicators are things like leads reached out to, meetings scheduled and meetings held, opportunities created, pipeline created. So it's really important for a sales rep to understand exactly how they're doing with the metrics that they can control and how they're tracking towards their leading indicators of success, so that revenue, which is a lagging indicator, is very predictable and they're on track to hit it. So a very common use case is really getting a snapshot of your business to make sure you're tracking well against your leading indicators. Claude is great at aggregating that data across multiple different sources that you give it access to. For this example, everything that I have is in HubSpot today. So we're gonna have Claude go through HubSpot and pull metrics to understand how we're doing towards our Q2 pipeline and how it's gonna lead into Q3 and if we're tracking to hit our Q3 number, because a lot of the pipeline that we create in Q2 will likely close in Q3. So if we come back to Claude here, if we go to customize, we'll see right here that we do have all these different tools connected, HubSpot being the main one for me. So as long as the tools that you have access to are connected to Claude, Claude will be able to query those tools to be able to pull information or metrics that might be relevant for this search. And so for me, since HubSpot is the main one, what I'm going to do is I already wrote this prompt out. So I'm going to copy and paste it here. But we're going to give Claude this task, which is to be able to analyze my Q2 2026 pipeline, break down any leads touched, meetings set, opportunities created, and closed won, and then give me the conversion rate of each of those different steps, as well as the closed won revenue. And then what are the, and then give a summary on how we are tracking to hit our revenue goal for Q3. So we're going to kick this off, and then let's see what Claude starts with. It might ask a few clarifying questions because it might be wondering what my revenue goal for Q3 is, but it should understand that we're going to be pulling data from HubSpot, and then from there, ingest that data and analyze it. So let's give it a minute to work, and then from there, let's see what Claude gives us. Now, Claude just completed the bulk of its analysis. It did ask me two clarifying questions, one on my revenue target, as well as whether these deals were reoccurring or one-time retainers. I didn't want to show real deal information, so I do have some pseudo data in here, but my Q3 target was $50,000, and then I'm giving it the understanding that this is our annual ACV commit deals. And so from here, it's going through and then giving me an understanding of different scenarios and how we're tracking towards that. So let's wait for Claude to completely finish and see what it finally outputs. Now, one thing I didn't do in my initial prompt is actually give Claude guidance on how I want the output of this to be. I wanted it to be like an HTML static web page for me to be able to see both the Q2 funnel as well as my Q3 outlook. So that is something that I want to clarify, because right now Claude just gave its analysis in chat, but I actually wanted an artifact from this conversation. So always specify what output you want whenever you're interacting with Claude. That'll help you just be able to minimize the number of prompts you need to use. All right, so this is what Claude outputted. It talked about closed won revenue, deals won, win rate, the average deal size, looked at number of leads touched, meetings set, gave us the conversion rate between all the different points of our funnel. So as a sales leader or sales rep, you can figure out exactly what you need to optimize for to make sure that you're hitting your revenue goals. Talks about conversion rate, deal economics, open pipeline entering into our next quarter, so forward looking, and then how we're looking at our Q3 outlook versus target. If our Q3 target is 50,000, how are we looking at actually beating that? And then it gives us a list of recommendations where it says actually 50,000 is a sandbag. These are all like pseudo numbers, so I wouldn't, anchor on the numbers itself. But really the goal of this is to show that you can take all the information across your different systems, pull them into Claude, have it aggregate that information, and then give you a report to be able to make decisions off of. This is stuff that used to be, you'd be kind of fiddling with Salesforce or fiddling in HubSpot to figure out. But Claude is great to be able to really aggregate a ton of information and give you kind of directionally what you should do in order to optimize your business or your sales process. Now, one other thing that I do want to show is now that we have this ready to go, what we can actually do is we can go to the Claude menu, and if we go to scheduled, we can actually create this as a reoccurring task. So we can come in here, we can set this up manually, we can give Claude the exact same directions that we gave it. So we can say something like, weekly sales metrics pull, and then we can say, summarize my sales pipeline to see how I'm tracking, something like that. And then we can even put the exact same prompt that we put initially. Obviously we'd want to change it to not look at just quarterly, but weekly, to say, analyze my, sales pipeline, and then break down on a trailing weekly basis. And so we can do this and set this up as a reoccurring task. And the reason we want to do this is whenever I've been a sales rep, a lot of organizations, whenever they're struggling with their sales process, they ask their sellers to be able to send reports either to their management or even to executive leadership to understand how the sales team is performing on a week-over-week basis, so that they can quickly triage if certain sellers aren't performing when it comes to generating pipeline, if we're getting demos but we're not getting POCs, or if we're getting late into the sales process with a lot of opportunities, but those opportunities late stage are not converting. Sales leaders and execs can know exactly where to optimize the sales process. So this is something that really helps you kind of automate that report by saying this. So you can save this off. And so every, we can say, every week, for example, like every, maybe Friday at 4 p.m. you want to run this report, and then you can send this off. And you can even have it to where you say, send this as we can say output a draft report and in PDF format, and draft an email to my CEO. You could even say it like this. So what Claude will do is every Friday at 4 p.m. it'll go into HubSpot, pull the information, generate a report as a PDF, and then draft an email that you can send internally. So this is a way that for us to be able to continually be able to quickly monitor the health of the business by using Claude to aggregate this information, generate recommendations, and then share those recommendations across the broader team. All right, now the second workflow I want to walk through is using Claude as a deal coach in order to look at your opportunities in your sales funnel and figure out what risks there are in the deals that you're actively working and how you can help mitigate those risks so you can drive them to becoming a customer of yours. So Claude is really good at this with coming up with new ideas and really being a kind of brainstorming partner. So what I'm going to show is if we go to customize and skills, I built this deal coach skill. Obviously you'll have access to the skill in the description below, so you can kind of customize this for your own process or your kind of coaching style. But the idea is that I've been working with sales leaders across my entire career, and I codified all of the expertise both from a process level but also the nuance into this skill, so that whenever I'm not sure how this deal is going to progress, I can invoke the skill to really understand like, hey, what gaps are there? So if we go through this, this is supposed to provide very tactical advice, and the frameworks that I'm used to when it comes to qualifying deals are Command of the Message and MEDDIC. These are very popular in the software space. And so Claude is going to look at the deals and the information with those deals against these different frameworks and give me recommendations on, hey, you have really good metrics for this deal, but you don't have a champion. Like, go figure out who would be a target champion, and here's some strategies to build them up into a champion. So these are ways for us to use Claude to understand those risks and then use frameworks that we already know work to figure out how we can get ahead of these risks. So what we're gonna do is, since we have HubSpot also connected and all the deal information lives in HubSpot, we can say something like this. I'm gonna copy this back in here. We can say run deal coach on my Ridgeline software deal in HubSpot, pull the contacts and activity history and give me the full plan. And should I revive or kill it? Now you can just call the deal, you can just say run deal coach, or you can use the / command to actually invoke the skill. If we do this, there it is. And from here, we can run Claude and let's see what it starts with. So it's probably gonna think through this. It's gonna review this skill file. And then from there, it's gonna have to go and pull the deal information from HubSpot. So let's let it work for a sec and then see what its first questions are to us, or what it's gonna output initially. All right, so Claude found the deal in HubSpot. So it's going through the CRM objects to pull all the information. This is a pseudo deal as well. But the idea is that any information that is available in your CRM, Claude should be able to pull all that activity history, all the notes that you put, in order to understand the health of the deal. And here you can see Claude's thinking, where it's saying that the email trail is a core story. Let me grab all the call and meeting notes as well to understand kind of the timeline and the process of the deal so far. All right, so let's look at Claude's diagnosis for this deal. It gave us a win probability of 10 to 15%. It looked at the entire timeline of the deal. So it looked at all the different activities that we had for this deal within HubSpot, any notes that we might have captured through the meetings, conversations, or emails. And from there, it built out a MEDDIC scorecard. In the past, I've had to MEDDIC a ton of deals in my career. This would always take so much time that I would only do this if the deal was above a certain ACV, usually in the 6 figures. But with something like Claude and being able to aggregate all this information from your CRM, you could MEDDIC every deal in your sales process, even if they're much smaller. But I think the big things to call out here are, at least for me, is 1, no champion, pretty as friendly but not powerful. No pain is identified, which is big. And then really no access to power. And we have no idea about the decision criteria. So, it's really calling out the fact that there's a ton of risks in every single point of MEDDIC. And then from there, it gives us a little bit more kind of nuanced take on the risks itself. And then it gives us a recommendation on plays ordered by priority. So it says, go above Priya, understand, go straight to the VP, get in touch with power to understand that, is this actually a priority worth solving? And it just goes over a couple other plays as well. And so this is a really great way to have Claude give you additional ideas on deals that you might be stuck with figuring out, like, hey, is this deal real or not? Or like, how do I progress this deal forward? Claude is really good at taking a holistic view of the deal, aggregating that information. Now, one caveat is you never want to take everything at face value, right? So these plays are good. I probably would do play 1. I probably wouldn't necessarily do a breakup email, because I don't necessarily want to push until this happens. I would rather get the breakup or a hard no from the VP before kind of breaking rapport with a target champion or a coach in this situation. So it's good to bounce ideas and get these ideas from Claude, but obviously use your intuition, use your nuance, and use your understanding of how the conversations are going before you execute on this. But here you can also see that Claude is talking about, review the account, kill the deal immediately if it's in forecast, and then it's asking if it wants to draft any email. So from here, you could, in theory, just say draft an email to the EB and push it to my Gmail drafts. I'll review and put the email to send. So you could even say something like this. So this is connecting, information from HubSpot, getting these recommendations, and then you can use Claude to actually draft an email in your Gmail inbox and then send it out from there. So this is how you can kind of connect all these different tools together when it comes to figuring out how we can take these sales plays and then start executing on them using something like Claude. All right, cool. So now Claude drafted an email that I could send to the EB to start actually executing on those sales plays. Now, next thing, let's actually look at a healthy deal and how Claude would react to that. So here is another deal in the sales process that we can do. So say, now do the exact same thing for this deal, where Claude is going to analyze it against the framework that we provided to figure out what sales plays can we execute on in order to get this deal to a closed won result. All right, so similarly, did the exact same deal diagnosis for this opportunity, gave us a win probability, went through the MEDDIC scorecard. And the reason Claude is doing this is we codified exactly what kind of output we want in the skill file deal coach, called it the top 3 risks, the plays, and then bottom line, what are some summaries? And then from here it's asking, what should we do next? What we can actually do from here, which I think is really important once you connect Claude to all of your kind of internal tools, is you can say, share the top 3 risks of each of the 2 deals with Sanjay in the Acu Sales Slack channel. And so we can even say this. So, if you have Claude, connected to all these different tools, it can generate these recommendations, and you can actually say like, hey, I've connected you to Slack. Can you Slack Sanjay with this information as well? So it's a great way to kind of take information that you're building in Claude, getting recommendations, and then also using Slack or Gmail to be able to do outbound messaging in Gmail, and then use Slack for any sort of internal messaging from this as well. So we showed how you could use Gmail or Claude to write and draft a Gmail email, and now we can say, hey, here's a way for you to use the Slack connection with Claude to be able to send a message to someone in Slack. All right, so Claude just posted in Slack and tagged me, so let's view the message. If we click open link, let me show what Claude gave us. So now whenever you use the Slack connector, any sort of messaging connector, it is going to be sending from your account. So it is sending from my Slack account and it's tagging me. And then it took the 3 risks at both of the deals and then put them in the Slack channel. So for both Ridgeline and for Vantage Signals. So this is a really good way to use Claude to look at the deals in HubSpot. If we look at this workflow end to end, we had Claude connected to HubSpot and we asked it to go look at a particular deal and look at it through our sales qualification process and score that deal, call out the risks, and then what plays we can do to help mitigate those risks. And then from there, with the sales plays, we could use the Gmail connector to start actually executing on Claude's recommendations by drafting messages that we could start sending to the EB. So that's a way to do all the outbound messaging with all the recommendations from Claude. And then we use the Slack connector to take those recommendations and risks and share it with our internal team. So you could send this to your CEO as a DM, you could send it to your sales leader so that your broader team is aware of the health of your deals and maybe how they could help drive them to a close. So this is a really great workflow to be able to pull information from all these different sources, get recommendations, and then also start executing on those recommendations or sharing them internally to other stakeholders. All right, so that concludes video 6 on how to use Claude Cowork for Sales. Now, my key takeaways from this video are the fact that we've connected Claude to a bunch of tools to be able to do 2 very common workflows for any sales rep. The first one is being able to connect to your CRM or any sort of source of truth with all your metrics to understand and get a snapshot of the health of your business. The second workflow is being able to connect to your CRM or your outreach tool to be able to do things like deal reviews, where Claude can look at all the history that you've had with a prospect or a company to understand what you need to do in order for that deal to close. And you can, switch out. I use MEDDIC and command of the message, but you can switch out based on whatever qualification framework you're very comfortable with to understand what deals are actually qualified and likely to close. And then we rounded out the video by showing how you can use the Gmail connector and the Slack connector to be able to send external and internal messages. So all the recommendations that Claude bubbles up from aggregating all this data, you can send an email to the EB at a company because that's the best sales play to get a deal done. Or if you want to update your boss on how a deal is progressing, you can also do that using the Slack connector. Now, throughout this course, I've used various skills for very common workflows that I do day in and day out. And so in video 7, we're going to dive into how you can take your very common and routine workflows and codify them into skills that you can use day in and day out and also share with the rest of your team. So I'll see you guys in video 7 on how to turn your workflows into Claude skills.